Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of We Need to Talk. Today, joining me on the show is Shanna Lee. She is an intuitive healer and celebrity manifestation coach. She's also the best-selling author of The Soul Frequency, Your Healthy, Awakened, and Authentic Life, and the host of the Soul Frequency Show podcast. Shanna, thank you so much for joining me today.
Oh, I'm happy to be here.
How are you doing throughout this pandemic and quarantine and all of that good stuff?
Well, the funniest thing is that I work from home, and so a lot of my life is spent at home. And my husband and I were joking. We're like, everyone's living our lifestyle now.
Right. Absolutely. That's how it is for me too. I perform a lot, but a lot of the things I do, I record at home or I do my podcast and my show at home. So I'm like, I'm a homebody. I'm actually pretty cool right now.
Yeah, no, it's funny, but it is. I mean, it's a change for the
Yeah.
world. I mean, we're going through a massive shift and change, and
Yes.
it's interesting because with what I do, my core of my work, it's been a very busy time. I think the fact that we're all kind of sitting at home makes us look at more things in our life and
Yeah.
makes us
Yeah.
evaluate our lives in different ways,
Absolutely.
and so.
Absolutely. So let's get into what you do. How did you get into being kind of an intuitive healer and speaking about positivity and helping people manifest positivity in their lives? How did you get involved in this?
I for years was not doing anything like this. I just had a career in real estate. I was, minding my own business, trying to make a nest egg for myself, and building a life. And I didn't see much beyond that. I mean, it
Mhm.
just kind of seemed like there were certain things that society told us we were supposed to do in life. Be a good citizen, like make enough money that you can put a roof over your head,
Right,
the
right,
basics,
right,
right?
right.
And what really struck me is that I started to work in my career. I was financing large apartment buildings and strip centers, and I started to work with very wealthy people. And I just saw time after time that there was a lot of success, but there wasn't a lot of fulfillment and there wasn't a
Mm,
lot of happiness. And that really, to me, fulfillment should have gone with success, right? If you
right,
have
right.
success in the world, you should feel ultimately fulfilled. And so that was one of the things that really started me thinking, well, if it isn't success that makes us fulfilled, what is it? And
Right.
so as I started to grow my business, I started to realize that those two were not synonymous. And I started to feel less fulfilled the more successful I got, and that was really confusing. And I decided at a certain point, I got pregnant with my son, and I decided that I wanted to live a life that was something that he could look up to and something that
Mm,
he could model. And somehow seeing it through his eyes had me see my life differently.
yeah.
And I wanted him to live free, and I wanted him to be, joyous and happy and fulfilled. And I said, if I want this for him, why don't I want this for myself? And that
Right,
really
right.
started like a spiritual awakening really in my life. And I dismantled an entire life that I built, and through my spiritual awakening tapped into these intuitive gifts. And there's a lot of unraveling, there was a lot of coming apart, a lot of what's going on right now in the world I was
Mhm.
going through personally, and everybody, no one else was going through it at the same time that I was
Right.
in my world. And so that was challenging and terrifying. And I really I've lived two totally separate lives. I mean, my
Mm,
life now versus my life then is entirely different. And I realized that a lot of us, part of my intuitive gift was realizing that what I was going through, a lot of people are going to go through. So I was shown that in the future, there would be something similar to what we're going through, which is like a
right,
mass awakening experience. And so
right.
that I was being given the tools at that time to be able to help people in the future.
That is so beautiful. I love that. And I think it takes a lot to kind of realize what your greater purpose is. And you clearly had that moment, like, this is what I'm supposed to be doing. And I think that's incredible. So I want to go back to something that you said, because I find this to be very, very true that the more success you have, the less fulfilled a lot of people do feel. And why do you think that is?
Well, we think success is, I'm going to say we are literally born and bred to think that success is the pinnacle. That
Mhm.
when you have success, it fixes all of your hurts, it fixes all your problems.
Right,
It's the great solver of everything.
right.
And really it's not, it's the great magnifier of everything.
Mm,
So if we have wounds inside, success magnifies those wounds. If we have things that need to be addressed, it magnifies the need to address them.
Yeah.
And so that is the thing that nobody really counts on. And as they start to get more successful, everything, including their wounds and including all the things they haven't looked at,
Mhm.
starts to become more in their face and starts to become bigger. And
Mhm.
it's really this idea of how it feels on the inside versus how it looks on the outside that is the crux with a lot of the people I work with. Versus, like, things may look really good to people looking from the outside
Yeah.
and they don't feel good on the inside.
Right.
And how do we reconcile that? How do we
Mhm.
make it feel the same on the inside as it does on the outside? And it's really like there's a big process with our ego that we have to go through
Yeah.
to really
Yeah.
live true to ourselves, right? And not
Mhm.
just maintain what it looks like on the outside.
Right. And I think that's also kind of an issue with where social media has led us today. You
Sure.
have the Instagram lives and the Facebook lives, but people are actually hurting. And I feel like I see that a lot. And so with the work that you do, I commend you for really getting into this line of work because I think it is very much needed. So now that we're in this pandemic, how have you seen like a shift in people's energy and in a shift in how people are responding to it? And how has that helped your work and how has it hurt it?
I think a really helpful perspective for people to acknowledge at this time is that there are many levels and layers to what's going on. So there's
Right.
clearly on the very physical layer a pandemic going on, but there are so many other things going on right now for people. One of which is that we are being squeezed just like an orange gets squeezed for orange juice, right?
Right, right,
And so whatever is in the orange comes out when it's squeezed. So whatever is within us that hasn't been resolved, that hasn't been looked at, that is sometimes multi-generational, trauma and things that we are carrying in our mind body system,
right.
because of the energetics of the planet right now, it is being squeezed. So our perceptions are being squeezed, our emotions, like when we're busy in life, the last thing we do is deal with our emotions. We're just
Mhm.
busy,
Right,
right? We're running
right.
here, running there. And
Yeah,
so
it's easy to
how
mask it. It's easy
intricately
to mask it. Yeah.
it is so easy to mask it. And so how intricately planned that all of us basically have to just sit. And for many people, unfortunately, they're not able to work or carry on their regular life at this time. And so that causes that, along with the energetics of the planet squeezing us, is causing things to rise to the surface. And I think it's important to note that none of this is new stuff,
Mm,
right? This is
yeah.
not new emotion. This is not new. This is just stuff that's been buried, right? It's a shadow side of ourself that's being pulled to the surface for healing,
Mhm,
right? And that's
mhm.
the important part, is that if we have the perspective of like, this isn't just happening because it's awful and horrible and I feel terrible. This is happening for my greater good. This is happening because we need to empty our vessels
Right.
and our vehicles to get ready for the next level. And so that is, a lot of what people come to me for, whether they realize it or not. Sometimes it's like, I want to talk about business or I want to talk about a personal relationship. And really what it comes down to is I'm holding a lot of stuff and I don't know what to do with it.
Mhm,
And I don't know how to move through this and how to build something new on the other side. And so I'm kind of the hand that people hold as we
mhm.
walk through the tunnel of transformation into the next section of our life, the
Right.
next emotional, mental, creative potential that we are.
Do you feel that some people view what you do kind of as a form of therapy?
Yeah, somewhat. I mean, I have a lot of people come to me who've been in therapy for years
Mhm,
and
mhm.
they haven't gotten a benefit from that, or they feel like they're still stuck in something. One of the things I love therapy, I think anything that is going to have people talking about the real stuff in their life
Is
is
good.
just a positive thing,
Right,
right?
right.
Like we need to talk about the real deal. What where it differs is basically, I mean, I think, therapists um are really looking to invoke you to ask the questions, invoke to you to share what's going on for you, and to help you kind of see stuff.
Yeah.
Because I have an intuitive gift, sometimes I'm seeing things that that other person isn't seeing, and I'm
Mhm.
going to say them. and I'm going to
Right.
bring you into conscious awareness of the stuff that you're not seeing
Mm.
and the stuff that's important for you to see to move forward. So the process can feel like it moves a little faster
Mhm.
because it's an active, it's not just the other person sharing what they're going through. I'm saying, look over here, you need to look at this, let's
Mhm.
bring this to the surface. You know what I mean? You feel this way not because of even your life, but because of your mother's life or your grandmother's life or
Yeah,
things that have happened down the line, right? Because sometimes we're carrying stuff that isn't even ours
for
and we're
sure.
carrying it for other people, you know. So I'm putting some pieces together, puzzle pieces that people are not consciously aware of, that
Right.
then spurs on a bigger transformation for
Yeah,
them.
and it probably, like you said, it probably spirals, and there's just more and more pieces that are coming to light. And I can imagine that is healing, which is what you do. You're an intuitive healer, so I can. That's probably just such a weight lifted off of everybody's shoulders when they come to those realizations, and you're able to point it out for them.
Yeah, and sometimes, like, even just saying, it's so amazing when I say to people, this isn't even yours, because
Hmm.
sometimes we carry things that aren't ours, like they're ours, and they are the biggest burden on our back.
Oh
And
yes.
just in hearing somebody who can see say, this isn't even yours, you don't have to carry this, like their
Right.
energy shifts immediately, like, oh, I can
Yeah.
put this down. Like,
Yeah.
oh my gosh, that's amazing. And so the shifts happen quickly. Like when we're dealing with the quantum realm, and we're
Hmm.
dealing with energetic shifts, like those happen in a heartbeat, like
Right.
instantaneous,
Right.
right? It's really getting at what are the reasons why we don't allow the instantaneous shift
Yeah.
that
Yeah.
is where the work lies, right? Like what are we holding on to where we won't
Hmm.
allow the shift to happen so that we can get to the shift and it happens quickly?
Right, for sure. So let's say somebody comes to you and they want to change their life and they want to get past, pain. How do you start a process with a new client?
I start with going into their past. So
Okay.
I'm looking at, just like we're like computers in a way, like we have software that we run in the form
Hmm.
of belief sets and perceptions about life and ourself and the
Yeah.
world. And so we're going back and looking at what's the software we booted, right? Booted up, and what are we
Right.
running so that we can get consciously aware of it. Because most of the software we run, we're not even consciously aware of. It's
Hmm.
just our reality. It's just the way we see the world,
Right.
and we don't question it. And so when we go back and start to be conscious of what's the software we're running and why are we running it? Why do we make these choices? Why do we have these beliefs? Is it ours? Is it somebody else's? Like there's so much. It's like opening a secret treasure chest of awareness
Right.
about
Right.
yourself,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
there's so much that comes from it, and there's so much um in awareness, we start to shift the energy in and of itself before we
Hmm.
even start taking different actions. So
Hmm.
we go back and we just look at things. And what's amazing is when I ask people to start looking at stuff, then what happens is like they'll be in the shower or they'll be driving in their car, and all of a sudden their consciousness will start pulling up the things they need to know. So they'll
Mm.
start having memories or putting puzzle pieces together naturally,
Hmm.
because it's like we've opened the door to healing. Therefore, when we invite in healing, healing starts to come. And
Right.
that's really kind of the magical part of the process.
How has being an intuitive healer and getting into this work affected you being a mother? Because I know you said that having a son and wanting the best life for him, you realize that why don't I want that for myself? So how has that all come together for you?
Well, he's like my teacher.
I love that.
I'm not sure I'm teaching him as much as he's teaching me.
I love
He,
that.
yeah, he's a special little guy, and he has love in his heart that I would say is not something I've ever experienced before. Like, not just because I'm his mother, but
Hmm.
he's really like a healer in the sense of opening the heart space. And so
Hmm.
for me, like, being a businesswoman for so much of my life, like it's easy to go into your head. It's easy to be, very linear. And
Yeah,
he just really has taught me the value in opening your heart and what's
that's
possible. And
so great.
I've used that with clients, and I've used it in my own life. And so, I would say that these kids are different, and they carry a different energy. They know why they came here. Most of the
Yeah.
kids, some of them are bucking the system in a big way because they know the system's broken, and it's all really wisdom if we can
Hmm.
get down, look at them in the eye, and connect. And say, like I say to my son, I'm like, what does mommy need to know? Like, what do you know that I don't know that I need to
Right,
know?
right, right.
And let me tell you, like, there's been stuff that's blown my mind that's come out of his mouth. And so, if we all did that as parents, I think that'd be super valuable.
That's incredible. I love that. I just had a baby, 4 I have a 4-month-old, and yeah,
Oh,
she's just the light of my world, and it's really, really cool to see her grow, and I imagine I just think kids are incredible, and I do
yeah,
think that we learn so much from them, so I'm excited to see as she grows, like, what I'm going to learn from her and how it's going to change me. I mean, it's already changed me completely, but,
of
in that sense,
course.
I love hearing that. So I wanna talk a little bit about manifestation because um, I think the concept of manifestation is really fascinating, but it is hard to fall into having a mindset that you can bring about good things in your life just by changing how you think. So, what do you tell people that don't believe the hype of that or think that it's impossible to really manifest something into your life that you want?
Again, I think when you understand the quantum realm, which is not something most people read up on, but
Right.
there are certain principles. Like, one of my core intentions is to bring that down to a very easy thing to understand, some of the
Mhm.
core principles of the quantum realm, because
Mhm.
then we understand, like, the biggest fear that people have is like, life is happening to me and I don't have control of it, and I don't know how I can do anything different. You know what I mean? It's very much
Absolutely.
the victim mentality. Like, there's a
Yeah.
frequency on the planet that is a victim mentality that tells us other people are more powerful, other people have
Mhm.
say so. I can't, I just have to like fit in where I can fit into other people's lives and worlds. And that frequency, that victim mentality is
Mhm.
like, it is a pervasive energy on this planet. And to
It's
really be,
overwhelming too. It can be very
it's
overwhelming.
very overwhelming. And to break, you have to break free of that, like, to have true freedom, right?
Mhm.
And it tells us that we don't have the power to manifest. And so the beginning is to just start to see the victim mentality within each of us, right? And sometimes when you say the word victim, people like kind of cringe and go, I'm not a victim.
Right.
Let me tell you, it is so subtle in some people and so there. So you got
Mm.
to look for it, right?
Right.
It's in every one of us because it's on the planet, right?
Mhm. Mhm.
So you have to understand that, but to manifest, you're going to step out of that and understand the quantum realm, which is that what we direct our energy towards in the form of thought and feeling is going to cause us to take an action, and it's going to create a new reality. So let me give you an
Mhm.
example of this.
'Kay.
Let's say I want to start a business,
Mhm.
and I'm like thinking about the business. I'm coming up with the logo and the name, and it's like thoughts. Imagine like a big tree, and every branch and every leaf is a thought I'm having
Mhm.
about this business. It
Mhm.
started with a stump. I built the stump, and then I'm like, oh my gosh, I could do this. I could do this. I could go here. I could build this. And I'm thinking about it all the time. And I'm
Yeah.
building this thought tree. Then I'm getting excited about it. So I'm pairing the thought with the feeling. I'm like, yes, I can pick a location. It's going to be awesome. And if I have enough thoughts about this location and enough excitement about the business, I'm going to take an action, meaning I'm going to go start looking for locations, right?
Mhm.
And then I'm going to find one and I'm going to sign a lease. And all of a sudden, I've got the beginnings of this business. I have a location for my business.
Right.
Every single thing on the planet is built this way. It's manifested through the form of thought and through the form of feeling. Now, here's where it gets interesting is it's the same thing that manifests everything. So let's say I'm struggling with my weight, right?
Mhm.
And I feel like I can't lose weight. And if my thoughts are, I'm fat, I feel awful, I can't lose weight, I feel horrible in my body, and then I couple that with a feeling of, I'm depressed, I just feel like this
Mm.
is never going to change, then I'm going to take an action like, oh, well, I'll just go eat the cheeseburger fries and have a couple shakes because this is never going to happen for
You feel
me.
defeated. You feel
I feel
defeated.
defeated.
Yeah.
And then I
Mhm.
manifest more of that reality.
Right.
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 So literally, there's nothing like woo woo or magical about manifestation. It is, what are you thinking about the most hours of the day? And
Mhm.
what are the feelings behind those thoughts? And
Mm.
how are those things driving you into action?
Right.
Because our reality is created truly by us. So, for instance, talking about the victim mentality, if we're
Mhm.
just feeling like the victim every day, then we're just going to see on our reality movie screen more victimhood, right? Where
Right.
if we start
Right.
thinking about something different, then on our reality movie screen called our life, something else will show up. And this
Mhm.
is not because people are skilled at this or not skilled at this. This is part of quantum science. It means it's a
Mhm.
principle of the law of the universe
Mm.
Like, so people need to understand it's not that some people can manifest and other people can't.
Right.
It's just knowing the practical steps about how to
Mhm.
do it.
It's interesting that that simple switch can
Yep.
change everything in your life. A friend told me a phrase, because I'm very much a believer in that, that your mindset brings about the positive things in your life. But I've stuck by this phrase for a very long time, and it's what you talk about and what you think about is what you bring about. And
Exactly.
that has stayed with me since high school, honestly, and it's so true. It's
It is so
scary how
true.
true it is. It really is, because like I said, I just had, a baby, and I'm very blessed that I didn't go through postpartum depression, but it is one of those things where it's like, "Ugh, I'm never gonna lose the baby weight, like, I'm just gonna go eat the ice cream," and it's like, "No," because if I keep having that mindset, then I'm just gonna keep eating ice cream, then I'm really never gonna lose the baby weight, and it's just gonna become a domino effect with feelings. And I don't think
Yep.
people realize that you really are in control, of what happens in your life.
You are. And once you start to like have evidence of that, meaning you
Yeah,
start manifesting, like you realize this is only what I've created,
right,
right? Like
right.
everything that I'm experiencing in, I am like, I'm magical, right? Like I
Mhm,
am creating this. And so you just have to start playing with it, right? And
mhm,
you just have to start. And one of the things, I'll give you a quick tool, or everybody listening, a quick tool. One of the ways to start tracking this and getting aware of this is if you write down a piece of paper, or you can look online. Sometimes people have these, and they have like 15-minute trackers where every
mhm,
15 minutes there's like a box you fill in,
mhm,
and you just take, like, let's say 4 hours of a day or 2 hours of a day when you're sitting there working or doing something, and every 15 minutes you set an alarm and you stop and you write down what you're thinking. Like, you just go,
mm,
okay, what am I thinking right now, and you write it down. What this does, if you did it for an entire day, it'd be awesome. But what it does is it shows you what you're manifesting. Like,
right,
where were my thoughts every 15 minutes today? And you become very acutely aware of how much your thoughts are negative
mhm,
and how much you're not thinking about what you want to create, but instead thinking about the things you don't like in your life.
wow.
And you have to really turn that over. But it's a great beginning tool to just get
That
aware.
is. That's fantastic. I'm gonna do that, because I think that's a really, really good thing to do, especially during this time. Because I think people's thoughts, like I said, are probably way more negative with reason. I mean, it's hard for people, especially if you live alone, to feel isolated. You can't be around friends and family. I get so frustrated that so many people in my life haven't been able to meet my daughter. But and
Yeah.
her whole life is FaceTime and Zoom at this point. But I'm trying to just focus on the positive. Like, I have her. She's here. My
Yeah.
husband and I are be able. The great thing is, my husband has been working from home. Typically, he would only be able to see her in the mornings or at evenings. So I consider that a
Yeah.
huge blessing that he's actually been able to see her grow these last few months. So, what do you think is the most important thing that you've learned about yourself when you shifted from being in real estate and having success, quote unquote, going into this type of work in this lifestyle? What's one of the most important things you've learned?
That you can, like, I learned for myself that I can apply myself to anything and
Hmm.
create anything. So, when I left real estate, and I think a lot of people will make transitions like this where it's very, like, it doesn't seem logical, right? Like, it didn't
Hmm.
seem logical for me to go to real estate to being an intuitive healer.
Hmm.
And and that really anything is possible if it's your heart's desire. If it's
Mm.
something you truly, truly want in your heart, like, you wouldn't want it. Like, I don't want to be a basketball player,
Right,
right? Thank
right,
goodness,
right,
because I'm
right.
I'm 5'1.5", so they probably wouldn't have me.
I love that.
But I have no desire to do that, right? Like, sometimes we think like, oh, well, I desire something, but it can't happen. It's like,
Mhm,
if you desire it, it's in your realm of possibility. There's a lot you don't desire. Right.
mhm.
And so don't discount what you truly in your heart desire. And sometimes I tell people, go back to your childhood. Like, what did you love to do? What were you good at? What did you naturally gravitate towards?
Yeah,
Because
yeah.
these are things that, like, are part of who you are before the world teaches you to stop being who you are.
Mhm,
And if you
mhm.
can reconnect with those, like, seeds of, like, purity, right, of who you really were back then, sometimes
Right.
it awakens who you are now that you forgot that you are. And so for me, it taught me I can create and build anything that is in my heart's desire. So I always check in every day for, like, why do I want this? Right?
Mhm.
Is it my ego that wants it? Is it something that really feels like soul directed? And if it's soul directed, I don't even question whether I can have that. Like, I just know so wholeheartedly that I can have anything that's in my truest heart's desire. That's full alignment. Like, I
Mhm.
am in my truth. I want this from the purity of my heart. And all I need to do is apply the simple steps of thoughts, feelings, it'll inspire action, and it will change my reality. Like
Yeah.
I don't complicate it. I don't go beyond that, right?
Mhm.
I only focus on the things that I want to manifest, and I
Mhm.
use those simple steps that I shared with everybody, and it just starts to pick up steam. And eventually it starts to draw people into it, right?
Right,
People get
right.
inspired by that and they start wanting to come to help you create what you want. And it all starts with your thoughts.
I think the biggest struggle for a lot of people is that, like, for example, when I try to meditate, my mind, I can probably do it for 3 minutes maybe. And then
Yeah.
my mind just goes like, oh, did I forget to do this? Or do I have to do this? Oh, wait. And then it just goes, it's just this domino effect of thoughts, right? So when it comes to thinking positively, how are you able to just turn off all of that negative? Because I mean, it seems like it's a gift that you have, but it may be more difficult for some people. So to my listeners, I'm curious, how would you explain to them to be able to do that?
Yeah. You want to know the biggest thing to changing anything in your life? Like the one thing that people struggle with the most is not even themselves. And they don't realize this. They think they're struggling with themselves. They're struggling with their environment and the people they love the most.
Mm,
That's what
all
they're
the
struggling with.
distractions.
Yeah, because here's the thing. We attract into our life, like let's say we've been thinking negatively. We then attract people into our life, be it our family members, the people we love, even acquaintances who are of like kind to that energy, right?
Yeah,
Cooler
yeah,
talk, you stand there, you complain about life together. And there's a bond that people create about complaining together, right?
yeah,
Or not being
yeah.
happy together. And you know what's fascinating is like, and people that have like immediate meteoric success, they have this experience where they were living in this world and all of a sudden they did something and they got really successful overnight, and their friends don't like them anymore, or their friends are
Mm-hmm.
jealous of them, or
Yeah,
they say mean things about them. And all of a sudden you realize like I was sharing a reality with these people, and then all of a sudden my reality drastically changed, and therefore there's no connection there anymore, right? Like
right.
we don't see life eye to eye. And it's really weird. And through my own spiritual awakening, there were many people that left my life,
Mm,
like in different ways, like either me just pulling away or them pulling away, because there was no more energetic connection there, right? Like I was changing so rapidly that while there was love, like, and I still cared about them as people, like I didn't feel the need to pick up the phone and talk to them. Right. And so, one of the reasons that we have such a hard time breaking out of our patterns is that everywhere we turn, there's the pattern through
hmm.
somebody else, right?
Yeah, yeah,
Someone else is saying, "Oh, you can't do this," or I don't believe in myself, so why should you believe in yourself?" Like all of these things that are constantly inundated. Funny enough, when we are left alone, we actually can change really quickly. Like if you
hmm.
were to have nobody in your life, right? Like which nobody wants.
Yeah.
If you have nobody in your life, you would be able to shift your thoughts, right? And so I give people tools like things like listening to podcasts are a great way to stay dialed into positive information. If you're listening, let's say 3 hours a day, just have it on in the background. Your consciousness is taking in that positive information if you're listening to something positive. If you're listening to like conscious music, or you know what I mean, music that feels uplifting, that's
Right.
a frequency of information that is good. So the
Mm-hmm.
trick is, if you have people in your life that you have been complain buddies with, or you have people in your life that are the person that you go to with a new idea and they go, that'll never work, you
Mm,
can't do that, like they just constantly put things down. You want to minimize your exposure to that person, even if you love them a lot. Like
right.
even if they're your mom or your dad or your brother or your sister, right? Like
Right,
sometimes
right.
those are the toughest relationships. You want to do, I'll give you a quick tip for about pattern interrupting. You want to do things like, if that person calls and they start complaining, you want to say, "Oh my gosh, I'm so sorry, I have to go, like I'll call you right back." And what you're doing is, typically the way we handle it is we say, "Stop being negative. Don't talk to me like that."
Right.
Right.
Exactly,
And then it starts an
exactly.
argument, right?
You're right,
So
right.
instead of that, you want to just go, "Oh my gosh, I'm so sorry, I have to go." And you just hang up and you say, "I'll call you back later." What you're doing in that moment is you're breaking the patterning. You're
Mhm.
stopping that pattern and you're interrupting it. And then
Mhm.
if you call them back, right, later, you might have a different interaction, right?
Right,
It's like that
right.
time has passed and the interaction might be different. But this is important for you to start not being the person that people can complain with, right?
Yeah,
Because that
yeah,
alone will start to change your energy.
for
And you can do it
sure.
by doing the pattern interrupt. You can also do it by, if someone starts complaining, just being like, "Oh my gosh, I got to tell you something that happened to me," and just change gears
Change, yeah,
and
shift it.
tell them a funny story or a happy
Yeah,
story.
yeah.
And they'll usually just kind of follow you down that road.
Right. In giving those examples, I keep thinking of the phrase energy vampires. And they
Yes.
just suck all the energy out of
Yes.
you when it's always just a negative thing. Because I think we've all had people in our lives like that, where no matter what the situation, and it's also, I've had the experience where I felt like I couldn't share something positive that happened in my life
Yes.
because there were so many negative things happening in their life. So then you're taking away your own positivity, and you feel like you can't even celebrate and have joy because it's going to affect this other person. So being, the person and the kind of heart that I have, I'm like, oh, I shouldn't be excited about this because they're not in a good place and they're not happy. And it's unfortunate that we as people do feel that we are not allowed to have those moments because other people aren't having them as well.
I write about this. I have a book called The Soul Frequency, Your Healthy, Awakened, and Authentic Life. And I
Hmm.
write about something called frequency gaps. And it's what
Mm,
you're talking about. It's about how we have a natural like desire to resonate with the people around us. If that means we need to lessen ourselves, right? We will
yeah.
to not have that gap be present.
Right.
And so this is another thing that keeps us in a certain reality. And so in the book, I go into how to handle these frequency gaps and how to move through them so that you can continue to grow. But it's a really important point in our relationship with other people.
Hmm.
We will sacrifice ourselves
Yeah.
to make other people feel comfortable.
Yeah. Because you don't want to feel or come across as being pretentious or narcissistic in any way. But what I learned, and my mother is, I God bless her, she's an incredible woman, huge part of my life still. We're very, very close. She's taught me you have to be proud of the things that you accomplish, no matter
Yes.
who's around you. So I'm very grateful to her for sharing that with me. And I love hearing the things that you're saying because it is hard sometimes. It really is, because you don't want to make other people feel bad, especially if they're not at a place where you are. In things that I've accomplished and any form of success I've had, I do now have a small group of people that I know I can share things with, and I know that
Yay.
we uplift each other and we're happy for each other's successes. But it took a long time to kind of peel off of those the layers of the other people, because I was holding on to their sadness. And you know um being an empath, I guess, is what they would say, is that you hold on to their energy and you hold on to their
Yeah.
feelings. You said something on your website that I want to bring up that I really, really love. You said that a lot of people told you were too much for a while, and that you realized that your two-ness is a positive part of you. Can we talk a little bit about that? Because I've never heard that before, and I'm like, oh, that's so cool to say it that way. That's great.
Yeah, throughout life, I mean, we get told we're too sensitive or too this or too that. Like, I mean, there's a lot of, whether it's from your family or kids at school or whatever. And so for much of my life, like I'm a very deep, deep person. And like
Hmm.
people would gravitate towards me and tell me secrets about their life and deep things about their life. And they would say, I don't know why I'm telling you this. And I would think, I don't really know either, but people
Yeah.
just do this with me.
Right.
But I
Right.
never was able to do well with like acquaintance relationships. Like I always had very deep relationships.
Yeah.
But throughout my life, people would say, like, why do you have to go so deep? You're so deep. Like everything you say is, and I just, for me, it was like, I'm just being me. Like, I don't even know how to not do this. Right.
Hmm.
And so now, like with the work that I do, I see that that is exactly what causes the change in people's life. Like my ability to create a safe space for people to really go deep themselves, and the way that I can meet them at whatever depths that they're at, is
Yeah.
how a lot of really positive change happens in every area of their life. And so that is my superpower, right?
Right.
And for much of my life, I didn't see it that way. I saw it as something that was bad or that I should try to change or make different, although I had no idea how to do that because I
Hmm.
was just being me. And so
Hmm.
I think many times in life, the thing that stands out about us gets made fun of, or the thing that stands
Mm.
out about us gets put down by other people because it threatens the way they see the world, or who they are, right? Like if
Hmm.
somebody feels like they're more surface level, they might be like, you're too deep, because they feel like maybe I should be deeper, right?
Right.
And they don't know how to do that. And so they just know how to put it down. And so this happens in many ways in everybody's life. And I think when we start looking at all of those things that have seemed like the areas that we should change, and we start seeing them through another lens, which is maybe this is my zone of genius.
Yeah,
And how
yeah.
can I use this zone of genius in my life? That's when I feel like something really turns on for people. It's like
Mhm.
using those things instead of trying to shame them and hide them. Like,
Right.
why not just be them and see where
Right.
that takes you?
Yeah. In your work and in helping people and in meeting different people of different walks of life, have you ever had any epiphanies about yourself through somebody else's experience?
All the time.
Mm,
All the time. And it's fascinating because the way that, again, the way that quantum physics works is like, sometimes people come to me, and like I said, what they're coming to me for is not what they're really coming to me for. Like, so
right.
I'm being shown like what the deeper work is that maybe they haven't seen yet.
Mhm.
And many times it's also reflections of certain things that I've been through in my life,
Mhm.
and gotten to the other side of. And that it's literally like the mirror image of that in some
Yeah.
ways. So, and then sometimes like I will have a thought about something, or an awareness about something, and then people will come about that topic. So like I have a pre kind of cognition,
Yeah.
which is interesting, or awareness, and then there'll be like three people that show up just naturally, right? Like just reach out to me through different channels and say, hey, I want to work with you. And it's like I got the information prior to them coming. So there's always this interplay going on. And I learn more too about my gift and the
Mhm.
quantum realm through watching it at work in the lives of other people. So
Gotcha.
watching how it expands their life and what happens, and we're always all learning, so it's
Yeah,
it's a beautiful
absolutely.
interplay.
Absolutely. So you're a wife, you're a mom, you're an intuitive healer, and you've accomplished quite a bit. Is there anything in your life that you're like, you know what, I'm going to manifest this to happen because this is what I want next?
Oh, one of the things that I have that has probably been the biggest challenge in doing what I do, and this is true for a lot of healers, like inside scoop time, um is that for many past generations and lives, like people who were seers were killed for that,
Mm,
and locked up for that, and a lot of persecution of being able to see things. And so when my gift started to come online, there was a lot of like strange fears about it in being vocal about some of the things that I was seeing. And it didn't feel like exactly logical. Sometimes those old fears are like, just part of your lineage, like
yeah.
part of your soul memory, and not even of this lifetime, but just almost fears of safety, like
Yeah.
around it. And
Right.
so that has been something I have had to work on the most,
Mhm.
in being able to share this gift. Like, at first I was only wanting to talk to people one on one, and that felt safe. And then, I started doing group programs and got feeling safe with that. But
Right.
but it's interesting. And so probably the thing I will probably always be working on myself is just um, having the truth come through, and then feeling comfortable sharing it, right?
Mhm.
Like my own personality saying, this isn't just for me, this is for other people to know this. Like sometimes I see things that, and my personality says, I don't know if people can handle that, right? Like
Mm.
I don't know if I should say this. Like,
Right, right.
should I say this publicly, and where should I say it? And I have these considerations as Shauna about them. And what I've learned is that if it's coming to you, it's not coming to you just for you. Like it's coming to you as a vehicle to share it. And my job and where my work is to be courageous with that.
Yeah, I love that. So before we wrap up, I would love for you to talk a little bit more about your book and where my listeners can find it as well.
Yeah, so I wrote the book The Soul Frequency for a couple reasons. One, to share what deep transformation looks like. So I share a lot of my personal journey of transformation throughout the book, and what stages I was in and what I was experiencing, so that we can
Mhm.
understand, the things that we go through. I think sometimes when we're changing our life in different ways, there are points that we get to where we want to run the other way.
Right.
and
Right.
and it helps to know that where you are in the process, like, oh, you're supposed to be feeling this way, and
Yeah.
it's going to get better. And so that's
Right.
why I wrote the book, is kind of to be the hand to hold, to
Mhm.
understand what it's going to look like after the tough stuff, right,
Right.
or
Right.
after the challenges,
Right.
and how to really expand into that. And so that was the intention of the book. And you can get it at Amazon or Barnes and Noble, any of the retailers. how'd the book?
That's great, and I think that that's really reassuring because I think people need to realize it's not an overnight process.
No.
There's several steps and it's gonna take time to get into this positive mindset and being able to manifest things for yourself. So I love that you kind of meet people where they're at and then help them grow in that way. Yeah. So
Yeah.
thank you for the work that you do. And can you let my listeners know where they can follow you and how they can find out more about what you do?
Yeah, absolutely. The Soul Frequency, SOUL frequency.com is our home hub. There's a blog, and we also host a podcast called The Soul Frequency Show. If you're interested in the coaching, I do these little 5 to 10 minute coaching bits on the show. So I would start there. They're called sessions, and they have some really good information. And then also, I'm on Instagram at The Soul Frequency.
Very cool. Well, thank you so much for joining me. I already feel positive, even more positive just speaking to you for that little bit. It was great.
Yay!
Great. And thank you so much to the listeners. Make sure you subscribe to We Need to Talk on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and YouTube. And we'll talk to you again real soon. Bye. Don't forget to follow us on Facebook and Instagram at We Need to Talk the Podcast and Twitter at _We Need to Talk _.